What we're roasting today is a coffee bean from Brazil. It's called Vista Alegre. We like to roast it a nice medium roast, so it's not too acidic, but it's not like a dark, bitter chocolate. Something really smooth, really nice and nutty. You can see this is what the coffee bean looks like before we roast it. A nice kind of jade color. Dump it into the hopper. Alright, so we're ready to rock and roll. I'm going to wait for the machine to heat up. Here in about 10 seconds. We want to make sure the barrel's at a certain temperature. We call that the charge temperature. And there we go. You can see the beans kind of floating in there. And so at this stage, you can imagine the beans are super cold and you got a drum that's extremely hot. It's about 400 degrees inside. We're trying to acclimate the beans. We don't want to get them too hot because then we start getting split ends. We start getting the pop. We want a nice, even kind of slow process to warm them up. And there's a specific temperature we use to get there. In about 5 minutes, we'll reach that temperature and we'll start getting closer to what I mentioned was the first crack earlier on. So at this stage, I can kind of relax. I can have conversation with a customer. I can go grab a cup of coffee. I can go do something else, talk to a customer on the phone, whatever it may be. But in about 5 to 7 minutes, I'll come back and we'll focus on the roast again. So what I'm doing is I'm checking both the temperature of the bean here. You can see in red. And at a certain point, I want to make sure the roast profile is working correctly. I got the nice color. I'm smelling the beans. I'm looking for certain progress within the coffee bean itself. And at this point, in about 2 minutes, we're going to hit what's called the first crack. It's a critical stage in the roasting process. You can literally hear the beans cracking, and what's happening is there's no more humidity left and the cell walls are breaking down and literally cracking. It sounds almost like popcorn. At that point, I almost heard it. At that point, you're in critical roast process. You want to make sure you're by the roast. This is kind of what develops the flavors of the coffee. So we're about 360 degrees. I'm going to turn on my incinerator. My dad's created this handy reminder that I have the incinerator. This is just literally just a little tool that my dad made to remind him that we turned on the incinerator in the back.
Just when you hang it.
So you hang it. And if you see it, you're like, hey, the incinerator's on. Make sure you turn it off. Because that part of the machine is literally, it's diffusing a lot of the smoke that we're releasing to the air so that we're not polluting. And it burns off all of the coffee beans.
Dad's a smart man.
Yeah, that's his way. And you know, I don't mess with perfection. So I'm just making sure we're good. Okay, so we're at 380 degrees. This is the temperature of the beans. This is the critical stage where we can hear the first crack, and I can literally hear the popping.
Yep.
I don't know if you can hear that on the mic. The beans have already started to crack. You can see we're getting some browning here. And so we're in what's called the roast development stage. The roast development stage is what's bringing out the sweetness. It's bringing out the body of the coffee beans, the brown sugar, and we want to make sure we're hitting that at correct stages. Otherwise, you end up burning everything, and we don't want that, obviously. And in about a couple minutes here, we're going to do what's called dumping the beans. I'm going to turn on the sweep, and we're going to dump the coffee beans into the cooling tray. When the coffee's coming out, it's super hot. We want to immediately cool it down, almost similar to when you're cooking vegetables and you put them in ice bath. Similar concept. So we dump them into this cooling tray and immediately start cooling the beans down so that we can develop them and prevent them from overcooking. That's what creates a lot of the kind of bitter tannins that you might taste in a poorly roasted coffee bean. So we're approaching the critical stage right now. You can see the color of the beans gotten a lot darker. Some even color. I'm using the sampler to check. Looks good. I'm looking for the smell. I'm looking for even color distribution amongst the beans here. The cracking is subsided, so we're literally just waiting for the beans to kind of finish roasting up here. Okay, I'm checking my stats That's what I'm doing back there. I got my handy digital timer here. Henry created a fancy tape here to prevent it from getting stuck in my hands. and you know, roasting inside the store is great, but it's also dangerous because you're interacting with customers. You might lose track of what's going on. So I got to stay focused on this bean, make sure that everything's going well. Okay, we're ready to dump here in a couple seconds. 1 and 2. Okay, the beans are all out. Okay, so we immediately start cooling down the beans. We've got the arms sifting the beans as well, so it's cooling evenly. You can see it's not very oily. A nice little matte finish to it. It's a perfect color that we like for the Vista Alegre. So now that I've got my information, I'm going to go dump it into my spreadsheet here. We're tracking the temperature of the roast. We're tracking the duration of the roast. What time we dumped it. The color. We'll measure the color later on, and we'll wash, rinse, repeat. Keep going. My name is Hrag Kalebjian, and this is Henry's House of Coffee.